End of the year lists are always fun to make, so I figured I might as well keep the tradition alive as many other people do here on YouTube and talk about my top 10 favorite albums of 2021. Now, last year I did a top 25 list, and this year I've shortened it to a top 10, mainly because I've been really out of the loop with keeping up with new music. As well, too, to be honest, there really hasn't been that many albums of this year that have impressed me above an average level. So, this top 10 list really is like a huge majority of the albums that I've heard of this year that I really enjoyed. Along with the fact, too, there is an honorable mentions list that I want to briefly go by that just missed the mark within being within the top 10 list. First honorable mention is by African Imperial Wizard. This is their debut full-length album. This is a music project that blends dark wave and African tribal music together, and it's quite the unique experience. For me personally, the first half of the album really sells me as it's spiritual yet very upbeat. The second half was where it kind of drifts off a bit and some of the tracks kind of drag out more than they should, which is a humongous reason as to why it missed out within being within the top 10 list. Had the second half be just as good as the first half, it probably would have made it within the top 5. But yeah, again, a really unique experience of a listen that if you want something that's both spiritual and upbeat, I strongly recommend checking out this latest album and the debut album by African Imperial Wizard. Second honorable mention is going to be Lantlow's Wild Hunt. Man, it pains me that it didn't make it within the top 10 list because I wanted this album to be perfect. Honestly, after waiting 7 years, finally Marcus has released something for Lantlow's. And while I'm happy he's still experimenting and going to the next evolutionary step with Lantlow's, has every album he's changed it up a bit, going for more of like a math rock, kind of like alternative rock, post-metal type of sound with sludge elements. There's a lot of like different styles being played here at some points. It's just, having these thick grooves within some of the tracks and having Marcus's really silky clean singing within it kind of ruins it for the most part, and it doesn't really meld and blend together as well as I wish it would. But still, some of the tracks within here, especially Planetarium, Marcus really hasn't lost his edge with creating some really surreal music. And I'm just overall happy that there is a new Lantlow's, but for me, it just missed the mark within some aspects, within being within the top 10 list. Next honorable mention is going to be the latest full-length by Peste Noire. Now, a lot of people wanted me to review this album. I had so many comments and messages asking if I was going to review it, and simply put, just no. I don't really feel like I need to waste my time talking to you guys about how much I enjoy Peste Noire. I'm pretty sure if you're watching this channel, you've heard me talk about them at least once from all the videos I've done. And while I'm happy that this is an improvement from the previous album, which really isn't saying much because their previous album was just so bad, I do enjoy this album for the most part. I still enjoy the fact that they're bringing their sound, within the 2020s. With their, again, blend of black metal and acoustic Gallic folk that they've really made all their own since they started, basically. My only problem with this album that keeps it out of the top 10 list and just an honorable mention is that the ambition that I look for by them, especially within everything they've done in the past, really isn't here all that much. And that was kind of one of the disappointing factors about it. But again, I'm just happy that overall they're going back to what made them, special and unique in the first place, even if they're really just going to the standard level within it. And the final honorable mention is going to go to Blazing Stone, Damnation. This album is so awesome. As you can tell just by their band name, they take a hell of a lot of influence from the one and only Running Wild, as that's one of the album titles for Running Wild. And damn, again, this album is just so awesome. If you enjoy Running Wild, especially the time period within the late 80s and early 90s, you are going to love Blazing Stone. It captures that spirit present day, And that is saying a lot considering the fact that Running Wild, as amazing as they are and forever will be during the time periods of the 80s and early 90s, present day they're kind of like a shell of their former selves, and Blazing Stone just captures that spirit perfectly, and really they're the next best thing. So for anyone who is a fan of Running Wild, this is a must-know and must-listen band that is just getting better and better with each album that they release. With all the honorable mentions discussed and out of the way, it's finally time to talk about the top 10 list at hand. Obviously, it's going to start off at number 10, that being Stormkeep, Tales of Other Time. And honestly, the thing that surprised me the most about this album is somehow it has gotten the approval of everyone within the black metal fan base. The diehards, the intermediate, newbies, and hell, even the people who say that they hate black metal because they want to look like angels on social media because they're too boring of a person to make their own personality, have like all unanimously come together and agreed that this album kicks a lot of ass. And I think what makes it just so appealing is the fact that the influences that are layered within this album are just really obvious, but make it really fun, as it feels like I'm just discovering all these little hidden Easter eggs within it. When you listen to the guitars being played here, you can definitely tell that it takes influence from a lot of the black metal bands during the second wave within the Swedish area, especially if you're a fan of Dissection or Sacramentum. You can definitely tell by how upbeat and fast the riffs are being played out, being smothered with a lot of melody, that it takes obvious influence from it. As well, too, there's a bit of keyboards being utilized within the album that remind me a lot of Emperor. So again, if you're a fan of like second wave black metal, especially within all the Scandinavian countries, there's a lot to admire with it. At number 9 is going to be Cynic's Ascension Codex. When it comes to progressive rock, progressive metal, really anything that has the word progressive within the genre tag, I immediately lose interest and I kind of just deviate towards something else. Mainly because for me, from my experiences, a lot of progressive music, I just feel like it's just overdone. Like a lot of the songs will range around 10 plus minutes long, or there's just so many different styles, textures, and tempos changing because it has to progress to the next thing, that I never find myself latching onto a particular sound or rhythm or riff or beat, that I just kind of get lost within the music. It just always feels like I'm having this battle within the music to just enjoy it because it's always changing. Whereas Cynic, I've never had that problem with them. They've always had their songs roughly around the range of 3 to 5 minutes long, and they just jam out while still being a progressive metal band. Yes, there's a lot of changes, but you still feel like they're jamming out. You still have moments where you can latch on to riffs or like guitar solos, and while they do influence as well jazz fusion within it, it's always been just such a tasteful combination that Cynic does, as they also have just a smidge of like psychedelic rock that gives a very spiritual kind of sound with really any of their albums. And with their previous album that was, I believe, Kindly Bent to Frias, that was released around either 2013 or 2014, that was really, for me, their low point. It just kind of felt like they were going so much down the progressive rock territory that it was just a really uneventful album. Here, with Ascension Codex, it's definitely more of the metal approach. And one thing I noticed with this album is that it's way more instrumentally driven, as Paul Masvidal rarely does any singing within it. Overall, I'm just happy to hear that Cynic has still got it to this day with its masterful sound, which is saying a lot because really Paul Masvidal is really the only original member left, knowing how to blend psychedelic rock, progressive metal, and jazz fusion to just this beautiful, breathtaking way that has made Cynic, just such a heavyweight within progressive metal. At number 8 is going to be Of the Wand and the Moon, Your Love Can't Hold This Reef of Sorrow. This is their first album within 10 years, and they still deliver after this long gap in between their previous release. Obviously, they take a lot of influence from Death in June, as most neo-folk projects do, But the overall just tone of this album has a bit more of a gothic, kind of like romantic type of sound with it that makes it just very enticing and kind of like dreamy like at certain points. A lot of the instrumentation on here flows very well. There's a bit of experimentation towards the end part of the album with some of these kind of like instrumental tracks. But again, it just all flows together very well. And for me personally, this is the best neo-folk album I've heard of 2021. At number 7 is going to be Portal, A Vow. Portal has always been one of my all-time favorite death metal bands in general, with their blend of very dissonant, technical death metal that's always been just so raw, surreal, and harsh. Really, they're one of the harshest death metal bands going right now, that they've made this style of dissonant death metal all their own. And with A Vow, they're really going back to how they started out in the early days, especially with their debut and sophomore full-length album, that being Sepia and Outre. There's really nothing all that fancy here. There's nothing that technical or aggressive, which what they did with their previous album, which was Ion. The aggression is really stripped back more with A Vow, and it just gives that really discomforting sound that for some death metal fans, I understand the fact that they really might not enjoy it all that much, especially if you're going for the riff heavy or kind of like, you know, the more aggressive style of death metal that has that like brutality with it. Portal doesn't really play around with those tropes. Instead, it's way more, again, of that dissonant sound that really makes it all the more dark and discomforting. Which for me personally, I've always found that to be the really standout and intriguing thing about Portal that really separates them from just the rest of all of death metal. It's meant to be discomforting. It's really meant for, I feel like, almost to an extent, people who enjoy the rawness of black metal, but you want just the density of death metal. And that's where Portal kind of plays around with for the most part, whether they're aware of it or not. And I feel like that's why Portal has always been like the death metal band that's almost unintentionally meant for black metal fans in some ways, I guess. But yeah, A Vow is just a very discomforting, nightmarish hell ride that if you're really looking for, in my personal view, you know, death metal that's really something of a new extreme, whether it be entertaining or just, again, more of that discomforting sound, Portal has always been and always will be a unique experience. And again, is a humongous reason why they're one of my personal favorites within death metal. At number 6 is going to be Ungfell with their third full-length album, Eskraut. Now, I know a lot of people say Ungfell, but I've always called them Ungfell, so sue me on that. I really don't care. But Ungfell is a Switzerland-based black metal band that I've been a fan of since day one when I discovered their debut album, Tolbring Gyar. And while, yes, they started out sounding a lot like Pest Noir, and over the years they've transitioned to their own unique style. And their sophomore full-length that came out in 2018 was my album of the year for 2018. Whereas Eskraut, I still feel like they carry on their own unique style, but they add a lot of bells and whistles with it. That, yeah, Eskraut is easily their most ambitious of the 3 full lengths, and I guess what holds it back from being another album of the year winner like the previous album is that sometimes their reach within this album just kind of extends a bit too much and kind of throws them off track in some cases, especially within the black metal portions with some of these songs. But again, they're still very enjoyable. They still have like that kind of like wacky, kind of like hooligan folklore type of approach that they do within the black metal approach that it still makes it very fun. But really for me, the standout moments are all the folk interlude tracks within it that I would honestly love to hear Ungfell just do a straight up neo-folk or folk album, because they know how to write some killer tunes within the acoustic approach of their music. But make no mistake about it, as you can tell from me, it's within this list to begin with. It's one of the best black metal albums of this year. They're still branching out with different sounds, and they're still creating their own unique style. And again, I'm always interested to hear and see what Ungfell will do next. But yeah, again, if you're a fan of, you know, Peste Noire, which I know which is a cliche comparison, I can't see as to why you can't enjoy this. Reaching the halfway point at number 5 is going to be the debut full-length album by Pacizma, Eminence, and god damn, this album kicks so much ass that I feel like has gone under the noses of so many extreme metal fans over this year, because I've never seen anyone talk about it. The only way that I have found out about this was the fact that some of my viewers commented and recommended me this in one of my videos, and I'm so glad they did, because god damn, if you've ever wondered what Dissection Storm the Light's Bane would sound like if it was like fueled by like bestial war metal, you need to listen to this, because it is so pulverized and will still have those infectious melodies that are just impossible to ignore. If you ever wondered what Dissection and Revenge would sound like, you gotta listen to this. The drumming on this album is just pummeling throughout, and I love how it's mixed and mastered, because the bass drum within it, you can just feel it in your gut every time it's being played out. It's just so thick and just perfect how it sounds. The riffs again had like that hyper melodic edge to it that a lot of bands from either, you know, that are signed to Antique or from France have like this playing style within it, and I just can never seem to get sick of it. This, to me, is one of the total package bands if you're a fan of melodic black metal. That is a must-listen if you just love ass-kicking extreme metal. Coming in at number 4 is going to be the latest full-length by Revrem Ib Moloch. As I've always stated, I look at Revrem Ib Moloch as one of the most boundary-pushing black metal bands that I've come across in recent memory, as they're labeled power trance black metal, being very avant-garde and blending a lot of dark ambience together. As well, too, the thing that they're usually known for by their kind of like niche little fan base is that all the lyrical themes are about praising Christianity, which is quite different when you're kind of used to the norm within black metal, it being like anti-Christian. But the experimentation and songwriting that Revrem Ib Moloch does is just always so intriguing. It's very powerful but very spiritual at the same time. And with this full length right here, it just sounds so catastrophic. The riffs just have like such urgency to it. The choirs that are utilized within it just make it all the more frantic and monumental sounding. Just, again, they always outdo themselves, and they're one of like the hidden gems within experimental black metal that if you think you've heard everything within this style, Revrem Ib Moloch will turn your understanding of black metal on its fucking head. So definitely check this band out, just overall in general, if you want just really expansive, experimental black metal done in a way that you didn't think was possible. Taking the bronze medal, coming in number 3, will be Mus Aux with their album Inheritance. This is their first album within 7 years, and I was completely thrown off when I found the fact that they were doing a new album, because I totally forgot about their existence. And within those 7 years, it was worth the wait, because this is gorgeous, just instrumentally driven chamber folk. This band only contains 3 members, one of them playing an acoustic guitar, another a violin, and the third playing a cello. And on paper, it may seem like it's very minimalistic and uneventful, but the composition and songwriting within it makes every single moment of this album just breathtaking and really engaging, as these songs range around 10 to 15 minutes long, and just the blend of chamber folk and classical music really makes something that may have, you know, obviously no words spoken within it, feel like there's a lot of passion and emotion just being driven out with every single, you know, just string that's strummed throughout it. It is such a beautiful piece of music that has like a dark, melancholic edge to it, but there's just something just, again, so atmospheric and surreal about it that for me it's one of the best albums I've heard of this year, and definitely worth the wait of 7 years. Coming in as the runner-up for my album of the year of 2021, taking the silver medal, will be Dungeon Serpent, World of Sorrows. Where the hell do I begin with this beast of an album? Easily for me, the death metal album of the year that just honestly tramples over everything I've heard of this year within death metal. It honestly puts all the big names of melodic death metal of this year to shame, honestly. It is just so humbling. Every aspect about it will just bulldoze you over and over again while still giving you the melodies that you would want within melodic death metal without sacrificing any bit of aggression that basically every other melodic death metal band this day and age does. It takes obvious influence from bands of the past like Argeslint, My Gauss, and Intestine Balsam, and just brings it forth within this decade, which is saying a lot because all the bands I mentioned, Argeslint, My Gauss, and Intestine Balsam, none of them have released anything in the past like 15 years. So this style of just really ass-kicking and actually being heavy for melodic death metal, it hasn't been done, it seems, in like over 15 years. So to have a band like Dungeon Serpent bring in for that style in this day and age, it's like, thank fucking God. It feels like my prayers have been answered listening to this damn thing. That I really hope to God this like leaves like a trailblaze for other and newer melodic death metal bands to follow. Make melodic death metal brutal, make it heavy. I know it's quite the difficult thing to do because so many bands just don't do it, but fuck man, Dungeon Serpent did it, and he did it so fucking well that, as I stated, it is easily death metal album of the year for me personally. And finally, we have reached the last slot to be talked about within this list. Taking number one as my album of the year for 2021 is obviously going to be Human Serpent, Heirlooms Eternal. This will probably be the last time ever I'll be talking about a new Human Serpent album on YouTube because, as you guys know, the vocalist and guitarist sadly passed away 2 months ago. And I'm not giving it this spot because of that for some type of sorrow. It's just truly is the best album I've heard. It's easily the album I've listened to the most this year because Human Serpent has always been and always will be just such a beast to be reckoned with within black metal, as it takes influence from that of Magua, Horna, Sargeist, Kraft, Necromantia, and just blends all those styles of like aggressive black metal together, that Human Serpent really became like its own unique entity within black metal and really quite quickly one of the big heavyweights within Greek black metal. This band has never disappointed me. I knew coming into this album when I did my review I was going to be impressed by it, and unsurprisingly it lived up to all my expectations, which were really high to begin with and then some. Again, if you're a black metal fan, you like all different kind of like approaches for just like aggressive black metal, as I stated, from all the influence that it takes, you're going to love it because it just blends it just so fucking well without it feeling like it being a copycat. And I do enjoy the fact that there is somewhat a bit more of ambition to some degree, especially when it comes to songwriting with this album, especially within the keyboards, within the outro portion of this album. It's a fun listen, it's an ass-kicking listen, and for me, it being like the last album for them, I have to give it to them and give them the title of Heirlooms Eternal being my album of the year for 2021. Alright guys, that'll do it for this video. Like always, links provided to everything I talked about will be in the description below, and that is basically that for this year of 2021. So yeah guys, thanks for watching. Like always, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated, and have a great day.